Hey, yo, everyone, Andrew here, bringing you another video. And today we're going to be doing my beginner's reading list to none other than the Batman. And I, of course, had to show off this beautiful Batman poster signed by Jim Lee, one of the neat little gifts that you got from 2 years ago at Boston Comic Con. Everyone that got to meet him got a little signed copy of that, so I just wanted to show it off because, you know how much I love Jim Lee. Plus, it was probably my most manageable Batman poster. I've got two more here, but they're a pain to take down. We're not talking about posters right now. We're talking about The Dark Knight. Now, as all of you know, Batman is without a doubt my favorite superhero and my favorite fictional character in all of history. There are a lot of great characters out there that I love to death, whether it's Captain Jean-Luc Picard, or whether it's the Red Ranger, or whether it's Luke Skywalker, or Dinobot from Beast Wars, or Leon S. Kennedy from Resident Evil, Link from The Legend of Zelda. The list can go on and on, right? Omnimon from Digimon, like all these fictional characters that are great, that I grew up with in my childhood, and I enjoyed in my adulthood. None of them touch Batman. No comic book character, no fictional character, no one. So, in making this list, it was actually really tough, because there is very few characters in all of comic books who's had such consistency in the writing and storytelling that has been done for their books. There's so much good Batman and so little that it's really hard to piece together a definitive beginner's guide list. But I think I pulled it off, and I think I pulled it off pretty well, too. So, in saying that, with this list, there's a couple things to go over, right? As with all my beginner guides, this is going to be quick and easy access to very digestible, very easy to get into, and also definitive stories for The Dark Knight. So, you can just pick these up and read them and enjoy them as they are. I'm going to be presenting these in the order that you should read them, so they're not going to be in chronological order. I may start with the origin of Batman, but then jump to 10 years later, and then jump back to year 2, and then jump to year 13, and then jump all around. Why? Well, because I kind of read Batman that way when I got back into comics when I was a teenager, and it did me good. Plus, I think there's certain stories that work better for newer readers than others. No offense, but if I tried to make someone read, I don't know, Batman R.I.P. right away, or Batman Prey right away, they may not enjoy it as much as reading, I don't know, Batman War Crimes, or Batman Fugitive. I don't know, I'm just throwing out names there, but the concept and the general thing is the same. These are not going to be in chronological order. If you want to know what chronological order it is, I can give it to you at the end. Last thing. This is going to kick some fans in the nuts. So here we go. No Elseworld Stories is going to be on this list. So all you fans of The Dark Knight Returns, which I love that book, right? All those fans of Gotham by Gaslight, or when Batman was a vampire in Blood Rain, any of that stuff is not going to be on this list. It's going to be mainly in-continuity, mainstream Batman stuff. Those are all great stories, especially The Dark Knight Returns. Often heralded by many comic fans to be one of, if not the greatest Batman story. I don't think it's the greatest, but it's definitely up there, and one of the most influential, but I'm only doing mainstream continuity. So, in saying that, let's get things started. Starting things off, and this should be no surprise to anyone in the bloody hell of the world we have right now, Batman Year 1 is the first book you should read. Canonically, still origin story for Batman, even though 0 Year technically is in there, right? Batman Year 1 is the origin story of Batman, and it is a 4-issue story arc divulging in time of Bruce Wayne coming back to Gotham, seeing how Gotham has changed, and really trying to figure out how he's going to be the hero that Gotham needs. He doesn't necessarily start off as Batman right away. He has to grow and evolve into the character. Not just that, the great thing about this book is it is also Jim Gordon's book. One of, if not one of Batman's most important supporting characters, Commissioner Gordon, who is Lieutenant Gordon at this point, gets his own origin story, and one of which shapes the character going forward. let's be honest, although Commissioner Gordon has always been present in Batman before year one, he was always just kind of a side character. But the fact that he gets such a big push in this book really defines the character going forward. It's a great book for Batman, it's a great book for Commissioner Gordon, and you also get to see some other elements for Batman get laid out here. The Falcone family, and also Catwoman making her mainstream modern continuity appearance. Batman Year One is a great story and the jumping off point for anyone that wants to get into Batman comics. Moving forward, jumping quite a bit in Batman's career, and quite possibly, no, definitively is my favorite Batman story, is Batman Hush. Now, Batman Hush is a mystery story. Not a particularly complex one, but one that is good nonetheless, in which Batman is being stalked by a new villainous and conniving villain, I guess, villainous villain, from the shadows named Hush. Now, Batman is trying to figure out exactly who is pulling the strings of all of his allies and all of his villains, while at the same time wrestling with his relationship with Catwoman, which has taken a turn for the better and more seriousness in this book. Batman Hush is really good for a lot of good reasons, and I kind of want to do my own retrospective on this book and kind of a 10-year later review, because one of the first books I reviewed when I became a YouTuber. But Batman Hush has a lot of good things going for it. It's a well-paced 12-issue mystery. The mystery isn't terribly hard to figure out, but there are twists and turns that keep you entertained through and through. You get an introduction to all of Batman's villains in this, a good chunk of them. Poison Ivy, Joker, Two-Face, Hush, Scarecrow, Ra's al Ghul, Talia Ghul, Clayface, Killer Croc, to say the least, right? And then you get a lot of Batman's allies in this. You get Nightwing, Robin, Alfred, Commissioner Gordon, Huntress, Catwoman, Superman. A lot of Batman's supporting characters show up in this. And it has some great action, great storytelling, some great internal dialogue for Batman. This is an older Batman. He's seasoned. He and the city have aged together, and you get to really get that sense of him in there. And most importantly for me, is that the art is done by legendary artist Jim Lee. The guy that I just pulled up the poster for a few seconds ago. Jim Lee is without a doubt my favorite artist, and in the early 2000s is where he really started to hit his stride. Not to say he wasn't fantastic back when he was doing X-Men and Punisher. He was. Or when he was in Wildstorm. But when he did the Batman 12-issue arc is really where he started hitting his stride and pulled out some really good stuff. Not only that, to get Jim Lee on his story for 12 issues because of such high-caliber artist he is always a treat. Batman Hush is a must-read and the second in the line of Batman stories that you gotta pick up. Next, this is a thick one, but you will read it nice and fast. Batman The Long Halloween. Another mystery, right? Because he is the world's greatest detective. This is set shortly after year one. So, technically, it should be the second book you read if you'd go in chronological order. It's set in year 2 of Batman's career, where he is tracking down a killer known as the Holiday Killer. Similar to Batman Hush, this touches upon many of Batman's rogue galleries and is a transitioning point for the Dark Knight, going from the typical mobster and crime lord up to supervillainy. You get the likes of Joker, Mad Hatter, Scarecrow, Solomon Grundy, Calendar Man, Riddler, just to name a few. And this is also serves as a origin story for Two-Face, how Harvey Dent's slow decline into villainy begins. This is a really good book, and it has such dynamic art by Tim Sale. You can't go wrong with it. Long Halloween has a timeless feel to it, too. And it's very reminiscent, at least for me, of a mix between the mood of Batman the Animated Series and the Batman Arkham games. I feel like those two kind of get embodied in here retroactively, because the Arkham games came afterwards. But really great stuff. Pick up Long Halloween. Now we're going to hit a lot of stuff that involves Joker. It's just going to happen. So we might as well start with, without a doubt, the most famous Joker story, and that is The Killing Joke. The Killing Joke is a story in which the Joker is trying to prove to the world, mainly to Batman and Commissioner Gordon, that all it takes is one bad day for someone to turn out like him. And does he succeed in that? You might have to read to figure that out. This is a huge pivotal turning point for Batman, for the Joker, Commissioner Gordon, and Barbara Gordon. Number one is, spoiler alert, something happens to Barbara Gordon that makes her so that she's no longer Batgirl anymore, and she has to go on another path of heroism. This is also where we see the Joker at quite possibly one of his darkest points, where he does stuff that is just true villainy. He's seen as a psychopathic monster here, but a true genius to his craft. It's a scary interpretation of the character. We also see Batman kind of at his most vulnerable, too, dealing with a villain that he just sometimes could lose control with. It's a beautiful, drawn and written story, and if you want a definitive Joker story, it's not my favorite Joker story, but if you want a definitive one, this is where to go. And this will start steamrolling into the events of the next two books. Next is going to be a story that is so important to the Dark Knight's career, but I don't think is the best book on this list. It's not bad by any means. It's a good read. I enjoyed it when I read it and when I reread it, but it has aged not as well, right? So heads up on that. But sometimes you have to read certain things if you want to get into other stuff, right? And again, like I said, it's not a bad book. It's still a good book. We're going to be talking about Batman, Death in the Family. This is one of the most epic and important stories in the Batman mythos. For those of you that don't understand, Batman's sidekick is Robin, right? But what you probably may have not known is there's been multiple Robins, right? The first Robin, Dick Grayson, which is synonymous with the name Robin, and probably the most famous, eventually grows up and becomes Nightwing. Batman's, I don't want to call right-hand man, but often they antagonize with each other. But he becomes his own person, right? Nightwing. And someone fills his shoes. And the person that fills his shoes is Jason Todd. And spoiler alert, it's in the title, this is the comic where Jason dies. Yes, Jason gets beaten to death by the Joker and, well, blown up and killed. This is probably the greatest loss of Batman's career. Because it's the death of his son, basically. Jason and Bruce had a unique, special bond. And Jason was always kind of a troubled child, but Bruce and him connected in a way that very few people have in Bruce's career. And when Jason died and was torn from him, it devastated him like you wouldn't believe. This has a lot of weird twists and turns in it, especially with Joker becoming an ambassador and getting diplomatic immunity, which is hilarious. But it is a tragic story and one that you need to read, and you have to read before the next story I bring up. So, Batman, Death of the Family. Moving on. This is a 2-volume set, but you have to get it, and this is one of my favorite Batman stories, Batman Under the Hood. Batman Under the Hood is, spoiler, the return of Jason Todd. Yes, we just talked about him dying, but Jason Todd does come back and becomes a mainstay in Batman's career. Now, the time difference in our real world between these comics is 20 plus years, right? So Jason Todd died in the real world a long time. In the Batman comics, he was dead maybe like 7-8 years. But regardless, Jason comes back as a vigilante known as the Red Hood. He is basically a dark mirror of Bruce Wayne and of Batman. He's a vigilante that will kill and do it happily. And he has a grudge with Batman. And the grudge is very simple. It's not that you failed me. It's why. Why is the Joker still alive? Why do you stick to this code? I'm going to challenge you on this code. Right here, right now. It's a fantastic look and a tragic look of a relationship which eventually gets better in the next couple years, but it's so tragic to see how these two interact. And the ending of it, where Batman has his final showdown with Red Hood and them discussing things, it's brutal. It's one of the most poignant moments is when Jason, and I'm not going to spoil too much, is when when Jason asks Bruce why he didn't kill Joker. And it's you can almost feel it's a son asking his father, why did you let the man murder me get away to do more bad stuff? You can see both sides of the story, and this is a fantastic story. Judd Wittick did a great job plotting this out, pacing this out, and Doug Mankey, who does fantastic art, also jumps on this. There's some tragic looking stuff. Fantastic work all through and through. We're going to go back in time, right? Going to go back before, right under the hood, back before Batman Hush, but a little bit after the death of the family. We're going to talk about a big volume, a big book here, right? I have a 3-volume collection. I only have volume 1 here. You can get collected in 2 volumes, and one big fucking book is probably one of the biggest stories I have here. But it's one close to my heart. Batman Nightfall. Batman Nightfall is the historic story where Bane, a new villain at the time to Batman's rogue gallery, broke Batman's back. But you know what's really unique about this story is it's a story about the greatest loss that Bruce could feel personally, right? Because he actually gets defeated here. I said that Jason Todd dying was an immensely great loss, and it is, right? But here Batman gets broken spiritually, emotionally, physically. He doesn't want to be Batman again. To the point that someone else named Azrael, Jean-Paul Valley, becomes Batman. And let me just tell you, he ain't a stable guy. And so now you have Bane running around, Jean-Paul Valley running around, and a broken Batman. This is one of my favorite Batman stories. For a while, it was considered my favorite. Hush has overtaken it, and it was tough to do. But this is still a phenomenal story. And like many of the other stories, it has a lot of Batman's supporting characters and a lot of Batman's rogue galleries, so you get a little bit of everything here. 3 volumes is what I have, right? This is volume 1 of 3, but you can get it collecting different stuff. There are some other supporting comics that you can read, like Batman Bane or Batman the Sword of Azrael, that gives you a little bit of backstory, but you can basically hop into this and figure everything out as you go. Fantastic stuff. This is Batman's equivalent to the death of Superman. Okay, we're getting up to the last 3 volumes, right? And we're getting into a little bit more modern era, 2007 onwards. And I want to bring out a personal favorite of mine, and one of which that probably doesn't get talked enough, but is a solid Batman read through and through. And that is Paul Dini's Batman Heart of Hush. Yes, we're coming back to Hush. Hush is a unique villain for Batman because he's such a personal villain for Batman. I don't want to talk too much about him, but he has many connections to Bruce Wayne and Batman in many different ways. And not only that, it tends to be whenever Hush shows up, Catwoman usually is involved too. The basic premise of this is that Hush wants revenge on Batman, true revenge, and he decides to do one of the most villainous acts he can. He surgically removes Catwoman's heart and puts her on life support. So Batman needs to go out, not only stop Hush, but get Catwoman's heart. The tragic thing about this is that in this book, in minor spoilers, Bruce admits his love for Catwoman in this, only for the next day this happens is when Batman R.I.P. happens and Bruce Wayne kind of disappears. So there's a bit of tragicness to the story if you know the overarchingness of Batman. But what really is great about this is it really kind of clearly defines who Hush is as a villain. And it also takes that next step forward for Batman and Catwoman. Batman and Catwoman's relationship since, 2003 when Hush came out has been a very slow burn. Even now, where they're a couple and technically married, but technically engaged, I don't know where their actual status is. It's still a slow burn. If you're a fan of those characters being shipped together, and I know not a lot of people are shippers of romance in the comics, but this is one of the true great love stories of comic books. Right up there with Gwen Stacy, Mary Jane Watson, Spider-Man, Superman, Lois Lane kind of stuff. This is a great relationship, and this is a good step forward for it. And it's just a solid story. It's Dustin Nguyen, I think you say his name. His art is so captivating. It's so captivating. Read this, right? We're coming up to our last 2. We're jumping into the New 52. Right? New 52 is kind of controversial for a lot of people, but one thing that was definitely not is the level of excellence and execution A little wrestling reference there. That comes with Scott Snyder and Greg Capullo's run. So I'm pulling out the two books that I think clearly define it the most, the two stories that clearly define it most. First of which would be the start, and that is Batman Court of Owls. This is a 2-volume series. This is just volume 1. You can get volume 2. It's a 12-issue story arc, so the same length as Batman Hush. And the basic gist of this is Batman is confronted with a villainous organization called the Court of Owls, one of which has been with Gotham since it's ever been created, but has never really paid a mind to Batman until now. It has turned its eye towards Batman and wants to systematically destroy the Dark Knight. This is a story that introduces one of the most interesting Batman villains, and I say villains with an S because there's no actual face of the Court of Owls. It's always a group, but they're definitely one of the most interesting Batman villains in years. And not just that, this is also a story of triumph, because no matter how dark down the hole Batman is, this is a story about him digging his way out. Very much like a story Batman R.I.P. would be, or Batman Nightfall, or so on and so forth. It's tragedy and triumph and everything mixed between. It's a great run. 2-volume story arc. This is volume 1. You can get volume 2. Definitely must read. Sorry about the editing hiccup there, but let's finish our list right now. And we've had a lot of Joker in this list. Well, it's time to talk about probably my favorite Joker story, and that is going to be Batman, Death of the Family. Not Death in the Family, Death of the Family. So a little bit of confusing mix up of titles here, but long story short of this is that the Joker has a really unique relationship with Batman, and it's one that can be interpreted in many different ways by many different creators, right? And I think Scott Snyder has one of the more interesting interpretations of their relationship, in that the Joker sees Batman as some weird project, that they're supposed to be destined to do this tango forever, and it's borderline love, but it's not. And he sees Batman's allies as getting in the way of them being truly destined to fight to the very end until they kill each other. And so Joker goes out there and he wants to remove Batman's allies. It's a tragic, tragic story. And how it ends is just how Batman defeats Joker is so gripping and so powerful. It's one of the best Joker stories out there. And it's not given as much love because, it fights against something like The Killing Joke, which is, the definitive Joker story. But this right here is my favorite, and you should read it. So yeah, that is that. That is my favorite Joker story, and definitely one you should always be on top of. So, I did say I would put these in chronological order before I go, just in case you guys want to do that. And you can, right? You can do it all in chronological order if you want. There's nothing wrong with that. I put in the order that I did because I felt it would have worked. But if you want chronological order, right? You start with Batman Year 1. You hop to the Year 2 story, Batman Long Halloween, which then lays into Killing Joke. After Killing Joke, you have Death of the Family, Batman Nightfall. Then you hop over to Batman Hush, the Under the Hood story, which then leads into Batman Heart of Hush. And finally, we have the last bits, which is Batman, the Court of Owls, and Batman, Death of the Family. So yeah, there you go. If you're new to Batman, I hope this list has helped you guys out. If you're not new to Batman, you're just here because you want to hear me ramble on about a subject that I always ramble on about, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Do you agree with my picks? Do you not? Do you wish I added Elseworld stories like The Dark Knight Returns in there? Do you think other stories like No Man's Land or Batman R.I.P. should have been on there? Let me know, right? This is supposed to be just an easy beginner's guide. I want to know what you guys think. With that said, this is Andrew saying, peace out for now.